That music is an incredibly tough act to follow. Let's hear it for everybody once again. It's a tough act to follow, but I'm very happy to be following it because now I get to ask all of these incredible people some more things about their music. The wonderful thing about music is that it cuts through, and it's the thing that binds us and unites us as human beings, that it brings us all together. But one of the reasons it does that is because it transcends language. It really does. See, I'm talking, and it doesn't mean as much as the music, right? So where I'd love to begin this was something that Matt said, and we talked about this for a while, and he didn't say it to me at all, and I'm sitting during the concert, and I'm hearing all of this music. I didn't know the origin of how this began, seeing the exhibition and all of that, and I thought, wow, generate music. If you put a DE in front of it, it's degenerate music, and this does the opposite thing. That it's the music that the forces against democracy tried to stamp out. And I've been thinking about this a lot because this past weekend was the 80th anniversary of the landing at Normandy that basically led things into play that let democracy win. And the powers that would have destroyed all of the music we heard tonight. And the music we heard tonight won. So where I'd love to begin this is I'd love to hear how each of the composers came to be involved in this and to say some words. And I know, Tyshawn, you called your piece Untitled, but I'm going to try to get some meaning from it out of you. I mean, I was feeling tons of stuff, so. What were you feeling? I was hearing mourning, I was hearing dirge-like things, but ultimately a triumph over it.
And that is exactly what I was hoping the listener would get out of that experience. The piece is more about memory, remembrance, tribute, tradition, all of these different values, sort of come into play when one experiences that music. And aside from that, I wanted to have a nice opportunity, to not only, put these values in the air, but to also find an opportunity to do something that was very different from the rest of the program. I've had 3 different ideas, and I ended up rewriting it 3 different times, so it took me a long time to get the score to these guys for that reason. But the more I lived with the work that I've done for PRISM and these guys, the more confident I was in a lot of the ideas that I wanted to pursue in this piece. Originally this came about as a result of my experiences listening to the Yiddish Radio Project, which for me was an important 2 CD set of archives, basically denoting, not only the cross-pollination, you might say, of music of Black American tradition and Jewish tradition, but also of Jewish life, Jewish values, and a number of other things that were happening in New York, during the 1930s and into the 40s. So to have experienced that 2 CD set and have lived with it for, I would say the last 13, 14 years that I've experienced listening to it, not to mention, having studied a lot of Jewish music, including liturgical music, as well as cantorial work, and also of course klezmer music, and I've even studied with a lot of the best practitioners in the field and the best scholars in the field. I don't know, is Mark Slobin in the house? Are you here? I guess he took off, but he's one of the foremost scholars of this field. And so all in all, I'm mentioning all of these names and all of these experiences because I think, what resulted ultimately, I thought, was a work that was the truest form to the way I like to compose music and the way that I like to work with musicians, and to have Ruben and David on board for this was, more than a welcome opportunity for me to, write something that, in some ways might challenge them, but in other ways might, let me see them in a different, kind of a context that would, that they would provide really valuable contributions towards, and I thought that they've done so successfully. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of what goes into the making of that piece.
Fantastic, thank you. And David, since he called you out by name, I'm going to call you out by name.
Well, he actually was talking about David Gilmour, but you can call me out now too. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, what I heard in your pieces, I heard klezmer, I heard blues, and what's so interesting is a lot of that music was created to mourn, but once again, it was such a joyous celebration, and music turns things around that way, and I just, your piece was so euphoric.
Yeah, well, I think I have to say that, back in 2006, together with the producer and multi-instrumentalist, so-called, from Montreal, we formed a group with Fred Wesley, the great architect of funk. Well, you heard his piece at the end of the program. And Abraham Incorporated, to bring together Jewish and black music. And to do it, not by like saying, oh, it's sort of like mediocre funk with a little Jewish flavor, or mediocre Jewish music with a little funk flavor, but we really went at it to make what Fred called blendation, and it was so much fun. And when we started to play together, we sat in a room and we started to jam, and we were kind of like on a first date and very, very shy. Fred Wesley, this legend, we had grown up with. And then Fred just looked at So-Called. He said, give me a beat. And then So-Called hit a beat. Fred started playing. I started jamming with Fred. And we had chemistry. And then we knew the project was going to work. It wasn't like a record producer putting three people together and saying, oh, let's see what happens. We had real chemistry, human chemistry. And that's the joy. And when we jammed, and then Fred took some notes. The next day, we convened a whole band, a whole horn section, rhythm section, and that project was born. Fred fleshed out the arrangements in one night, and so it was an amazing experience. And so a journalist was talking to me recently, and he said, yeah, so Abraham Incorporated was kind of the prototype for this project. And I said, yeah, in a way it was. And certainly my involvement and just, I heard Sidney Bechet when I was 11 years old, and I said, this is it. This man is talking to me. He's like my grandfather, giving me the most valuable lesson I could ever learn. So that connection of being culturally Jewish and feeling black music in a deep way from a very early age has, just made it so incredible for me to be part of this project.
And another word for what this all is convergence, which is the title of your piece, Susan. And I thought it was so interesting how you put Yiddish words to this Black American anthem, and in so doing, universalized it even more, even for people like me who don't understand Yiddish. I understand a few words here and there, but from studying German in college and being not the best student years and years ago.
Well, I didn't write the Yiddish words. Josh Waletsky wrote them. But do you have a question?
Yeah. This is sort of an open-ended discussion, but my question is, what made you decide to do that? How did you come to that point to say, I'm going to set this and incorporate this into this piece?
Well, I wanted to use, I know that the Black anthem is sacred. I know it's a sacred song to African Americans. And I kind of approached it with humility and respect and honor. I asked Josh to please not tamper with the words. Like, let's keep them it's not an interpretation. It's a very direct translation. And I just wanted to use my love language. Yiddish is my love language. And I wanted to use my love language for a song that is African American people's love language. And I wanted to share my love language. And like Helen was standing out of respect for the song, and I approached that song with utter respect and knowing that it will make some people feel uncomfortable. And I don't want that. I want people to know I come with love. I come with wanting to stand side by side with my brothers and sisters and wanting to be close to them. And like I said, this Yiddish is my love language, and this was a way for me to be closer to African American people and their tropes and their traditions and the things that are important to them.
Thank you. One of the things that you said about coming to this place from love reminded me of a gesture that you made, Ursula, before you began your extremely moving piece about your brother. And I think about this a lot now that I'm an educator. A lot of people talk about having safe spaces, the importance of having a safe space. And when you unpack that a bit, there are people who've challenged that notion and say, more important than having a safe space is having a brave space, having a place where you can be brave and say your feelings and get them across, and not as a way to hurt somebody else, but as a way for other people, for us to understand each other. And I thought what you did was extraordinarily meaningful and beautiful. So.
Okay. Thank you for that. I was thinking brave space before you said it. I'm like, is it brave space? Yeah, somebody taught me that last summer. I like to say that when I get the chance and when I remember it, that this is a joy and a thrill and a blessing to be able to share in a performance and live, but I also like to let people know that I am a poet for, by, and with the people. So I do it on the streets of Philly. I do it in the hardest area, so many of my comrades. So I just wanted to say that I actually enter into a lot of things that are called brave spaces intentionally, because a lot of times we say it's a safe space and it's really not. So my piece, I just wanted to, it's not I just wanted to, I was in angst. I'm a poet who says it all. And so, in working with, and I'm like a lone wolf. A lot of times I'm just doing my own thing, and I love to collaborate. And the art of collaboration snatches me out of that lone wolf mode and reminds me of the balance you have to achieve and the respect and the mutual everything we are creating together. And I thought that the best thing to do would be to tell my own story. And I have a poem on the end of the Roots album, Things Fall Apart, that tells my brother's story. It's called Return to Innocence. But this piece was me telling me this story. So when I wrote it, I sobbed. When I shared it with Matt, we sobbed together. And the only way that I could think of to not throw all the fireballs, which is what I always wanted to. Not to hurt, right? But it's just what it's all for the whatever. But what can I do here now in this time? And so I took the Zora Neale Hurston route. Wasn't silent about my pain, and I shared it with Matt, and then you created Lament, right? So, that's what we're doing live in action. Is I shared on the phone when I wrote it. And we're on the phone and we're crying, and then we're in rehearsal, and then you made Lament. And that's that. I think that's proof positive of mutual aid, art of collaboration, creating in a hard-ass time about a thing that was hard in the beginning and then became harder. come October and all the hard things and what we gonna do? Will you? Do you?
Yeah. But it's about creating that zone of empathy for other musicians and for the audience. And I'm really glad you brought up Matt's piece, because I felt that, and I felt that connection between the two, even though this piece was a much older piece that was written for your father, another, closest family member, so these ties, but then there was this tie across families because of this story. And I'd love for you to speak to that, Matt.
Yeah. When Ursula read her poem to me, what I heard was this yearning for her brother who never experienced all of the things she has experienced in her life. She was only 18 years old, and she went through this journey of creativity and development, family, and she never had her brother there, and this incredible yearning for him to be with her and experience, what she has, all of her achievements and all of her heartache and all of her, everything. And it just reminded me of my father, who died when I was just 10 years old. And he had a really hard, long and difficult death. And we always think about, when someone passes, that you grieve them, their passing. We grieve their passing, but we also, grieving is also yearning for that presence as you kind of move through life, and there's a void there that is, that is never filled. And you imagine, for me, I imagined what it would be like to relate to my father as an adult. I only knew him as a kid, and he was this brilliant printer, painter and printmaker and art teacher. And I look at his art and I just want to speak to him about it, And so I felt that so deeply, that that kind of feeling of yearning for your past family member and, what could have been. And so I just sat down after we spoke and just newly arranged Lament, added violin and percussion to kind of bring new color to it and make it blossom more. And I dedicated it to her brother, Yeah.
And of course, one of the amazing things about music is they're not with us, but they were both with us tonight, your father and your brother. And along the same lines with music, when you notate music and you give it off to other people to play, you're not there, but you are there. And that makes me think of Yotam, who was not on stage tonight, but his music was. He was here on stage with us, and it's wonderful that he's in the room, because now we get to ask him and talk to him about his piece and how it came about.
I started writing this piece well before October 7th happened. I was in Israel. I was supposed to be in Israel the whole year this year, teaching as a Fulbright fellow. And it was very, very painful for me to have to leave, have young children, and we felt that being in a war was not the place for them. It's not their war. And so I had to change the course of the piece as I was writing it. And the piece is in two parts. I don't know if you heard the real division that Tyshawn makes in the middle. And it's a kind of a work of dissolution and a work of disentanglement, and which is really what I was feeling. There was really, as I was writing this commission, trying to fulfill this commission on time, I was really in a period where I felt like making art was the last thing that I could do, and it was very difficult to write the piece. And I think that the second half of this piece is very different from the first half. And nobody's harder than a composer about their own work, right? And so at first, when I thought about how it turned out, I thought, gosh, the second half is not as good as the first half. And now, you have to we all have to be gentler on ourselves. I think that the work is exactly what the work is. The work is about my reaction and my feelings to what happened, what is happening, and how difficult that is for us all. And I think that these incredible artists that I got to work with, that I'm so honored to work with, musically made that happen, which is a very difficult thing to make happen musically, to make this sense of there is some kind of failure happening musically in the second half of the piece, and to make that a musical and artistic thing that is still beautiful is a great paradox, which it's very hard to verbalize. It's like talking about music is like, what's the quote? Dancing about architecture. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Do you want this?
Yeah. Oh. Well, Diane had the first word with her piece, so I want to give her, she hasn't spoken yet, I want to give you the last word in all this, the symmetry to all of this. Yeah, it was really, I thought to myself, how is this concert going to begin? How are you going to set the stage for all this? And your piece set the stage so well. It introduced all of these elements so extraordinarily. And I wonder, did you know going in that you'd be opening the program?
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Yeah. As a matter of fact, I was so shocked when Matt said, we're going to put your piece first, and I went, oh no, you're not! Oh no way! I'm going home now. No, but I'm. Oh gosh, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, audience and and comrades. It's just so wonderful, I'm telling you. Okay, so Ironies was written. It's really about how I felt, I guess. It's through a child's eyes, really, the first movement. I call it the three movements. The first part, the chant, and then the and then the sort of a faux fugue section, and the funk stuff and everything, and then the last movement is kind of peace, love, and tie-dye kind of jam. So so the first movement is really my feelings as a child about my grandparents' experiences and my grandfather's incredible talent. I was 2 when he died, but I heard him, and my grandmother's grief was so great, and she raised me really, and so it was so great and so really debilitating, for her and everybody, the whole family really, and so it really was those hymns that you hear throughout the piece, the spirituals and hymns that you heard, and the gospel song, which is really a spiritual, Didn't It Rain, also is, are songs that she sang, my grandmother sang when she was upset, when I could see that she was noticeably upset. I was 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 by then, so I could feel it, I could see, and those were playing, on the little turntable, when she was upset. It's just like, didn't it rain, children, rain, oh my Lord, didn't it rain, oh my Lord, didn't it rain? This is like, so it was a real, direct line to the music kind of thing, you know what I mean? And at the same time, the irony, actually the rest of the grief and the pain was the fact that she was, she was a home woman. She you know, did housework, right? But she also scrubbed floors for, you know, for white individuals and mostly Jewish families. And that was you know, she was, you know, really 12 years old when she started doing that kind of stuff. You know, her father was an enslaved African, and there was a whole bunch of stuff happening then, and she, you know, that kind of thing. So as it as it went on, she and my grandfather, they used to talk about, like, once my grandfather passed, they would talk about and still went, you know, also with my mother and my uncle, to Rabbi Abel Respi's tabernacle in Philadelphia on Broad Street. And he was a black Jewish rabbi. And there was a whole community of black Jews in West Philadelphia during that time period. And and I had a mezuzah on my door, actually. And I kissed it every morning before I went to work, you know, before I went to school, type thing. You know, and at the same time, we had the music. I mean, my grandfather was a virtuoso guitar player, and you know, he played the blues, but he played everything, you know, and he could comp everything, you know. He would just hear like Andre Segovia, and he would just like whoa, all over the place. So it was like that kind of deal, you know. It was just like that kind of thing, and they, you know, they ended up, you know, he and his 4 brothers played at rent parties in New York. So so it was like that. So that was, you know, the grief and the pain, you know, it's just like, but and all of that irony of her scrubbing floors and then blah 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 blah. And then the second movement is like, you know, it's just like my mother and my uncle were really deeply involved in the Black Power movement. And it was huge in Philly, of course, as it was everywhere. And so I just felt like, you know, I mean, this is a conversation. This is a conversation. You know, at that time I had met a lot of folks that were, I mean, my friends that were Jewish musicians. And because of you know, I have you know, my family legacy of guitar playing, I picked up the guitar and I became a singer-songwriter. And when I was a singer-songwriter playing folk songs and you know, writing music, I played this music with Jewish Americans. And we played at the, you know, Togetherness House, Coffee House, you know, in the whole coffee house circuit in Philadelphia. And as a matter of fact, we played with the same place that the Bacon Brothers played. As a matter of fact, before the Bacon Brothers were the Bacon Brothers, that's Kevin Bacon, for instance. Kevin Bacon was our roadie at Togetherness House, Coffee House. And so, but Michael Bacon was the star, you see. Michael Bacon was the first person I heard at Togetherness House. He was incredible. His voice was just so smooth and gorgeous. It was amazing, you know what I mean?
That's like 1 degree of Kevin Bacon.
That's 1 degree of Kevin Bacon. That's right. And he also played conga drums, and it was blah, 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 blah. So, and the last movement was just that. It was a celebration of that time in, you know, when we played all over the city in that, you know, vein, and those memories coming back, and that, you know, this is just the whole irony that all of those, my Jewish musician friends were in my house, you know, and my grandmother cooked for them, and you know, it was just wonderful.
Well, everything tonight was so wonderful and spectacular.
Thank you.
I don't know about all of you, but I really want to hear all this music again. So that CD's coming out 2025, or download, or however it is. I hope there's a CD too, or an LP or something. But this is, yeah, because I've got to hear it again. And I'm afraid we're out of time. I think we might have gone like a minute or two over time, but you know, this is not a union gig. Thank you.